TradeTheMBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 8th of September. Well, that was a nice bounce back. We had that magenta was slightly leading yellow, but red was still hanging strong above. And what we got was conversion of midterm and long-term buyers jumping into that, and even a little minor support from the short-term buyers, which had already begun this early part of salvaging the support. And once it caught fire, it just kept going and lifting it back up to previous algo level. It's hiding underneath there. I can slide this over. And that pretty much puts us status quo. From the original decline breakout, I mean, this has been the median line for quite some time. And there's a lot of interesting dynamics. As oil's falling, there's beneficial aspects to that. However, that is still going to generate the Fed continuing to do what it does. So that's going to have a counterbalancing. So there's still a lot of uncertainty. And of course, like we said, now that everyone's coming back from holidays and the like, uh, we're going to have electioneering that's going to start to build up towards the end of September. And that's going to be interesting to hear the different visions of where things should go, whether there will be more gridlock or we will continue to have uh, ongoing stimuluses on a regular basis. The euro bouncing on all of those concepts right there. It still hasn't come back to its 23%. That was a strong turnaround move and bringing it back up to parity. Uh, which, how ironic is that? It takes a strong move just to get you back to parity. From a gold standpoint, a little bit of resurgence because if things improve a little bit, then maybe this idea that there will be this deflationary cycle may not happen. It's still too early to tell on some of those things. But what was critical is the drop of oil below that previous stability point is only going to ease things and take some of the pressure off economic conditions. And as long as that's heading in that direction, that will take a lot of strain off of market players for a variety of reasons. Camera there decided to do a little collapse on me. TLT bounce back on the move up. People pulling out to go into the market and a little bit of a rise, so a little bit drop in rates. It still has more to fall simply because the Fed isn't going to give up. There's nothing in the data to suggest the Fed will change course. And, at least the data that they're looking at. Some might reference the real world, but that wouldn't do you any good because it's nothing to do with the real world. Bitcoin holding off again right at that bottom level, so barely at that 18 plus, and was able to find support with the giant market move. But you can see how anemic that is relative to what we saw from the broader market. So it did not participate at all in cryptocurrency, and I think that is a broader issue. So this is where those early buys came in from the initial dip, and green crossing over it went ahead and took advantage of that. There was still some back and forth shakeout, but um, continued to stay long on that from an Opus T standpoint. And then intraday, I hate when it does that and the chart moves all the way to the current. And I had it all positioned correctly. Say la vie. So dark blue lines the start of the day from post market turning into the new day. We had a little dip. They bought it back up, and we had a little bit of softness that came through, which was reasonable, but it held pretty close around the 50% level, and then turned around into a buy scenario, and that really then lifted again. Once that was bought back up, there was no stopping it from there, and that resulted in a nice move to the upside. And it pretty much stayed. We had a couple of periods where it looked like we were going to have the potential for a nice decline. If I can get this to advance for me. It's acting very slow today, which is unusual. So right in this range, we ended up with the move here on the shakeout over that plus 15 came across, but then started to break down and looked pretty decent because we hadn't got the orange dip, but then right about here, the orange dips down and that begins the next move. And these are all off previous algo levels. And so you can see the start of them in the beginning of new positive extremes, not really new because they had already existed and happened to be almost identical to the same locations, which not uncommon. We deal with that a lot. And that's why I kind of leave those lines for a period of time because there's no reason not to. They tend to be confluences here. Again, it was resistance, hit down, boom, moved right back until it becomes support, and that's exactly what we've supported on for. I mean, this is a significant amount of trade time when you're looking at tick chart here. So that's why they're so important and so valuable, and got to keep them on your charts because they just have too much relevance, and especially for giving price targets. It's interesting that we had this chart, a large white MBI spike here prior to the pre-market, and now white's leading. And sure enough, that led to a zero move right here, even though it was an intra-bar move. Still, we visited the 0% line. So that's how effective that is. As always, look for me on the Skype chat. Trade well. We'll talk again later.